Rise and shine, my sinners. When Father Evil starts his day, he gets a little deadly. Deadly Grounds coffee has the richest, smoothest flavor you'll find anywhere. It's sinfully delicious. Once you go deadly, you never go back. Order yours at getdeadly.com. Coffee's so good, it's scary.
Hi, this is your host, Rigor, and you're listening to The East Meets the West with my co-host, Patsy the Angry Nerd, who has just celebrated the 250th episode of one of his podcasts, Throwdown Thursday. Are you still recovering from that, Pat?
Yeah, that was a long show, and there was a lot of folks coming on, and we didn't have any specific schedule for like how long people were going to stay and when they were going to jump on, so we just kind of, played it by ear, and, we had a good time. I thought you were cosplaying as Billy Idol for a moment, just because of the lighting, and your headphones looked like long dangly earrings.
Right. Oh man, how long did it go till?
We did about 3 hours, so about 10:30.
Wow.
And then we kind of hung around for a little while longer after that till about 11:30.
Oh my! Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was a long.
Yeah, I was glad you guys invited me on.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I was to say it was a long show, but yeah, of course, it was. You and I do this show together, and I have nothing but respect for you. So I wanted to have you be a part of the, the big episode, and like I said, we cast a wide net. We asked a bunch of people to come on, and some people weren't able to make it. Some people were. We're asking people from different countries and time zones, and. So, I'm happy with how the episode turned out.
Nice. Yeah, it was awesome. I felt bad because for some reason my Wi-Fi was so shitty. You guys would turn into the swirly loading pictures for a while. And so I would just sort of sit there and smile and wait for it to come back so because I didn't look like a dork. But I did one thing stupid. My wife pointed out afterwards. I didn't realize that, I was doing the whole Brady Bunch thing because, the squares at the beginning of the Brady Bunch and they're all looking at each other.
Yeah.
I was doing that thinking the configuration was the same for everybody. And my wife afterwards was like, you nitwit, it's different. The blocks are all different for everybody. So I guess my joke didn't really work that well.
Usually if you can get it just right, and I don't know what the settings are, but if you can get it just right, you can get it so everybody's seeing the same thing. You can rearrange stuff, but I don't know how to do that, so I didn't.
Oh, okay. Oh, man. All right. So, actually, one last thing I wanted to say. So, I was thinking when we here at the East Meets the West, when we get to our 250th episode, I was thinking we could have Bob Eubanks on, who I had on Then Is Now. He could do some cattle roping. Then we could drink tons of whiskey, eat tons of lo mein, and then maybe have a couple of lynchings. What do you think?
Up until the last part, I'm with you. The whiskey and the lo mein, I'm good with. I'm always down for whiskey and lo mein.
Absolutely. Who isn't? All right. So today we are finally breaking into the 1980s with the Shaw Brothers film Shaolin Hellgate, a.k.a. Heaven and Hell, from, you guessed it, 1980. And then we're going to cover They Call Me Trinity from 1970, which is one of those movies that, because of the sequel's title, I always get it wrong, but I'm pretty sure I get it right here. It's They Call Me Trinity. But first up, we're going to talk about Shaolin Hellgate.
做梦也在想你，可是你在几万里之外。
我回来了。别动！
我们是在
在阴司路上。哎，你看。
So I wanted to read this from a review of Shaolin Hellgate from a website called City on Fire, which is about Asian cinema. And what they said basically was, if you don't think drugs have done good things for us, then do me a favor. Go home tonight and take all of your VHS tapes and DVDs and burn them, because all those Hong Kong directors who made all those great movies that enhanced your lives throughout the years, they were real fucking high on drugs. Chang Che was so high, he directed a movie called Heaven and Hell.
Yeah. Yeah, that's. I got very much like trippy David Lynch vibes from this, and it's weird. Like it's got a 6.2 on IMDb, but only 124 reviews, which is crazy when you consider that They Call Me Trinity has a 7.5 out of 10 with 20,189 reviews. So,
wow,
it's got 20,000 more reviews than Shaolin Hellgate.
Well, I think, though, too, Shaolin Hellgate was, first of all, hard to find, and I don't think it was released here. If it was very, very limited, like 1 or 2 theaters. I felt like it was as if the movie Star Crash and the movie Xanadu had a love child, and the child had a fever dream about the Venom mob. This movie was that dream.
Yeah, this was definitely like what dreams may come, combined with like the Matrix, like combined with God of War. Like it was so weird.
Yeah. So let me give the synopsis here, which I actually had to pull it from like 3 different places because there's no one real good synopsis, and IMDb's is just like 2 sentences. So we start off in heaven, where the angel named Zhu Bao saves royal maid Ji Zhao from a whipping, and together they flee to the mortal world. Now gatekeeper Jin Ling aids them in their escape and is confronted by heaven's top-tier soldiers led by Chiang Shang and his magic ring, and those guys are dressed as oversized poodles, so I'm going to call them the Poodle Guards. Jin is punished by being banished to dwell in the mortal world of Earth, and we never see the couple again. Once on Earth, Jinling is reincarnated as a simple taxi driver, but his kind-hearted nature sees him come to the aid of another couple. Chen Ding and Shi Qi are doting teens who first sing a sappy love song in front of a fountain that spews packing peanuts instead of water. And their only obstacle to happiness is a drug lord named Mr. Huo, who wants Shishi for himself. The couple jump into Zinling's cab to flee when a carload of thugs stops them, and in the ensuing fight, misfortune strikes when Zinling himself is shot dead defending them. His murdered soul has nowhere to go but straight to hell, and like the previous couple, we never see them again either. Now, once in the underworld, Zinling befriends a sad girl named Hang Qin, or Red Dress, who was sent to hell for getting high and jumping out of a window. Traditional Buddhist texts describe 134 levels to hell from the Tang Dynasty forward. Hell is comprised of 18 levels, or as Wang Chi would put it more simply, Chinese got a lot of hells, Jack. The two decide to skip judgment in the Palace of Hell, but are soon separated, and Jiling finds himself condemned to the gambling hell by the Judge of Hell himself. Swiftly making his escape, the two are soon reunited, falling in with a gang of bandits before being estranged again. Zinling is sentenced to the Plow Hell, while Qin is snatched by Hell's brothel madam Yen. But just when things look hopeless, whispers arise amongst the City of Lost Souls that the Buddha of Mercy is due for his annual pilgrimage, and his reward is reincarnation for the most worthy souls. The Buddha of Mercy makes his yearly visit to the city, and he singles out Jin Ling and tells him to recruit 4 other honest wrongdoers, as opposed to evildoers, who are wrong souls whose help he counts on to fight their way out of the underworld. Zin tests each soul by cutting them to see if they bleed red instead of black. Once he determines that he's found the right 4, we realize that the Venoms are back. Now, we're told their own brief backstories. Lo Meng's a street youth, no surprise there, who was shot dead by a gangster. Philip Kwok was a soldier, killed by a corrupt official who was once his brother in arms. Bruce Tong is wronged and tortured by similar corruption. And Sun Chan was the victim of a robbery gone bad. And in that scene, look out for Kara Hui in a cameo as his girlfriend. Now, once they're all located, the remainder of the film more or less descends into one long martial arts brawl between Lee and his team and a legion of Hellguards who just happen to be the spiritual forms of their mortal enemies. While this movie sometimes can almost get tedious, the action, the amazing sets, the monsters, the overall color scheme seem to work in a way that I figure it probably shouldn't, but it did. And it also, I want to add that it reminded me of a Mexican wrestling movie, which I love Mexican wrestling movies, so...
Yeah, it was.
So, Pat, first impression. I mean, you kind of said it, but
I mean, it was bizarre. It was so weird, and like, it was definitely out of place. And I wholeheartedly agree that there were lots of drugs that were consumed during the making of this film. The singing was just out of place. The set pieces were absolutely ridiculous. Like the scene where he's trying to escape and there's like a gate and he climbs over the gate, but like there's just like the gate and the two pillars. You could just go around it. Like I mean, I guess it's supposed to be some weird representation, and then the fountain and them singing to each other and
oh yeah,
like,
and I don't think the song was the song translated for you in the version.
Oh, it was not.
Oh, okay. It was basically the sappy love song. She's all singing about his muscles and how manly he is, and he's singing about how cute she is and how much they love each other. It was awful.
I mean, that makes sense. You know, yeah, it was a weird experience watching this, and the first time I watched it was only 25 minutes long. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Like, this is, you know, how long can this drug-fueled rampage go on? But I was like, all right, this can't be right, because it just cuts off in the middle of a scene. But yeah, I didn't watch the trailer.
I apologize for that.
No, it's not a big deal. I didn't watch the trailer. I didn't look at the IMDb, as is my tradition with this. All I did was, throw it on and see what happened. And I mean, there were some good fight scenes. Obviously, there were some, it was weird though. Like the beginning fight scenes when they had, they're trying to escape heaven, which I don't understand why if you're in heaven, you'd be punished for dropping something, and with 300 lashes. Like, I mean, it's heaven. Shouldn't nothing break? And like, you're gonna get whipped 300 times? Like, that's insanity.
Right.
I mean, whatever. Everybody's version of heaven is different, but like that wouldn't be mine. And then you have the lead guy there. He kept like hitting guys in the neck with his weapon, but like nothing happened. Like, it was weird.
Right.
Like he kept like, it's like, oh, I win. It's like, no, you don't win. I did like seeing some of the backstories of the Venoms and like why they were in hell. Like, again, this is a weird religion. It's like, oh, you were trying to protect someone and you got killed. Right to hell with you. Like, wait, what?
Right.
You got stabbed protecting your... Like, I must have blinked and missed, but who shot him with arrows while he was defending his girlfriend? Like, I know that...
Oh, and they weren't even arrows. They were like fondue sticks.
Oh, like, because I must have looked away for something. I'm like, when the hell did an archer show up? Like, what is going on here? Like,
I think he like turned to his car and pulled them out and then whipped them at Sun Chen.
Yeah, because that was weird. I'm kind of surprised, and you can tell that this is a different time. That you see the scene when the and I'm losing his name, but he gets shot right through the NFL logo on his shirt, and it's like, first of all, you were able to have the NFL logo in your film. Like, if you tried that shit today, like you're out of luck. I will also
that was Lo Meng, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I will also say that the makeup job of the scary guys, the demons there, I mean, I don't know if it was last second or they were trying to save money, but, it certainly looked like one of those two things.
Well, there's a lot that goes into this film in terms of the making of it, and we'll get back to the cast in a little bit. I'd like to talk about them. But it had a troubled production history. They started filming it in 1975, and the shooting title was called The Hell. But then I guess the funding dried up, so the project was shelved, and then they resumed back in '77. But at that point, the principal cast members, David Chang, Maggie Lee, and Shih Tzu, whose contract had expired, were no longer available. So Chang Che drafted a bunch of guys that he had in his movie Chinatown Kid, got them into that, and then he got the Venom Mob in, and they completed it in '79. And filling out the footage with the backstories of them and all that stuff, and then they finally released it in early 1980. I guess though it was not a nightmare for the editor, that somehow he was able to put it all together fairly easily, even though it's like this fucking fever dream thing. But the big thing about it was that it's billed as an Alexander Fusheng film. Now he was the second couple that were on Earth that got killed at the taxi cab. Or no, I'm sorry, he didn't get killed at the taxi cab, but he got away. But people went in thinking it was an Alexander Fusheng movie, and it's actually Lee Yin-min who ended up becoming the main character, and he's the guy that played Zin from Heaven. He is in all three segments, Heaven, Earth, and Hell. So it's interesting that they still were able to kind of pull this movie off.
Yeah, it was definitely a massive undertaking, and I'm astonished that the editor was able to do this fairly simply. Maybe he was on a bunch of drugs too, and he didn't. He wasn't quite sure. I'm like, hey man, I cut this all together for you. It's totally good. And then they were like, holy shit, it is. Like, no, we didn't expect that. Yeah, it's definitely a trip and a half. Like, the opening scene is just like, what is going on here? Like, am I watching like a Jodorowsky film? Like, what's going on? Like, what are we doing here? Like, it's absolutely bonkers. I mean, they get the really good fight scenes, and I kind of liked the different torments in hell that they were showing.
Yeah. Oh, the flaying alive, being boiled alive, the gossip ladies having their tongues pulled.
Yep.
So many good ones.
Guys getting impaled, and like it was nuts. I mean, I thought it was pretty good. Like, I don't know. I don't think it's my favorite of the Venom films by any stretch, but it's definitely a movie that I watched.
That's for sure. I have to say, the first time I watched it, I actually had to watch it twice. Well, I usually do anyways for these films, because the first time I'll watch it and the second time I'll take notes. But so the first time I watched it, I got the plot completely wrong. I thought that the couple on Earth was the same as the ones that were in heaven, because they kind of looked the same to me. And so I thought when Jin went to hell and he was supposed to gather the Venoms as a team, I thought they were going to fight their way out of hell and go back to Earth and rescue the couple. And that didn't even happen. They walked out, they had like some swirly 70s stuff, had 70s clothes, and then it was the end. And I was like, well, wait a minute, what about rescuing the couple? And then when I found the synopses online, they weren't even the same couple. They were just completely unrelated.
Yeah, and
so I was all confused.
You see it and you're like, okay, yeah, like that's a natural thing. But there's so much going on, and like, it's not being clever for being clever's sake. It's not like, oh, we tricked you. You thought this was happening. It was, here's a bunch of stuff, and we're putting it all together, and it's like, oh, I bet you couldn't make this movie. Oh, yeah? That sounds like a wager to me. And then he made this wacky-ass movie.
Now, I don't have any other titles, but this is not just a one-off. This is considered, it's sort of a subgenre called Fantasia, Fantasia. And a Fantasia film combines fantasy, kung fu, wuxia, which is the period piece kung fus that we've been watching, musical theater, gangster noir, sci-fi, love story, and pantomime. So it's basically anything goes. And where the pantomime fits in is that the set where the two people are singing to each other, the couple, that's a typical British pantomime stage. So that's why it's a little wacky with the popcorn peanuts, packing peanuts instead of water.
Well, I mean, that was honestly like the least of like the weirdness, like, because they're sitting there singing that stupid song, and it's like, where's the kicking? Like, this is
right.
I mean,
And did you notice there were no sound effects in that fight?
yeah, I thought that was weird too. I'm like, well, it's hell, so they don't get all their cool sound effects. Like that's just, yeah, it's strange. It's a strange movie. It's like, keep your weird heaven and hell fantasies out of my straightforward kung fu stories. Like, because we didn't get, like, I didn't care about the main characters, like, at all. Like, they weren't charismatic. They weren't fun. Like, most of the time we watch these Venom films because the Venoms are fun. Like, they play off each other. Like, they're interesting. Like, they're good characters. This one, it was just like, I don't care. Like,
Right.
it's like, oh, it's a Venom film, and it's like, it kind of reminds me of Godzilla 2014, where it's like, you don't get to see any real Godzilla action until like the last 20 minutes of the movie.
I know. When the Venoms finally showed up, I was like, yay, thank God. And the reason I knew it was a Venoms movie, I had to make sure. I mean, not only is it on the list on Wikipedia, but I bought the DVD, and on the cover it says, guest starring the Venoms. Which, if you notice, their names didn't show up till the beginning of the Hell segment in the credits.
Yeah, otherwise, like that's the only thing that made this movie watchable to me. Like, this was, like, on par with Life Gamble. Like, it was just...
Yeah.
I'm fine with my action films having a thin excuse for a plot, but this... Like I said, I just didn't care about the characters. Like, I didn't care about the main guys.
Right.
It's like, okay, he's saving her from heaven because she was about to be tortured? Like... give me something where they're accidentally sent to hell, for no reason. And, like, all these good guys are sent to hell for no reason. Like, I get why a couple of them were sent down there. It's like, oh, we're going to run around, start fights, and, get murdered, because we're a bunch of jerks. Yeah, that's fine. You deserve that. But it's like, oh, you were double-crossed by your brother, and he stabbed you because you wouldn't kill him. Ha! That'll teach you. Go to hell. Wait, why? What did I do? Well, you should have been smarter. Like,
Yeah, it's considered. A lot of people consider this one of Chang Cheh's worst films.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
And I think it's a little more interesting and engaging than you expect. I think going into it, you and I both expected it to be a standard martial arts film like we've seen, just, with a variation. We didn't expect to get a full-on Fantasia film. And one thing I think that hinders our Western people viewing of the film, you had mentioned earlier about, well, in heaven, this shouldn't happen, or at least in my heaven. And that's the thing, is this thing sort of explores the Chinese versions of heaven and hell, which may not necessarily make a lot of sense to us, or may not be how we, with our Christian ideology of fire and brimstone. It's a little more straightforward. And, in the Chinese hell, I guess the souls that commit mortal sins are assigned various trials and tortures and tests until they've atoned for it, and then they're judged redeemed, and the soul's allowed to go back to Earth reincarnated.
I mean, again,
So
that makes sense, and I understand that. It's just that I get everyone's vision of hell is going to be different. Even two people in the same religion are going to view hell differently because it's subjective.
Right.
It's like your worst fears and your worst tortures, and you're atoning for the things that you've done. But from what I understand, everybody's version of heaven is supposed to be this utopic paradise where everything is wonderful.
Right.
And it's like, oh, you broke a vase, and now we're going to whip the shit out of you because you broke a vase. But it's like, how could you? And, like, it seems like there's some sort of subservience, and, like, it's like, oh, well, you serve me because I'm the master of this domain. So, it's almost like, an afterlife version of feudal Japan. It's so weird. Like, that's the only part that, to me, like, I get that it's a totally different, religion, and it's not, specifically made for, American audiences or Christian audiences. It's just, I didn't understand why that was the driving force of the plot, was we have to escape heaven so we don't get tortured. Like, that was my main issue with the plot there.
Well, the worst is getting tortured for dropping a comically large peach. I mean, really? 300 lashes?
Yeah, it's like, first of all, why would it break? You know, second of all, like, you don't have another one? It's heaven. Like,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, they were definitely very inconsistent with the magic powers, and like weapons would appear and disappear from guys' hands. People would appear and disappear. It was just like they were on fucking drugs and just were like whatever. Okay.
I'll be honest though.
Now he's got an axe. Okay, now he's got a spear.
Watching the fight with the golden ring, like that was kind of cool. Like you know, again, a new weapon that we haven't seen. You know.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty cool.
And the way it expanded and contracted, that was cool.
Yeah, I liked that a lot. Like I thought it was pretty good.
That's one thing I was a little disappointed was Chang Shang didn't get a whole heck of a lot of screen time, and he was, forced to wear that stupid poodle-looking costume. It was too bad.
Yeah, very unfortunate.
So I wanted to get into the cast here. Well, first, of course, this was directed by Chang Che, who's directed all of the movies we've watched so far. Also written by him and co-written by Ni Kuang and Chu Lang. Its alternate titles were Heaven and Hell and Heaven and Hellgate. So, once again, there's no Shaolin in the film. It's just a marketing tag, I guess, to get people to like it. And one thing to note, it was, at least for me, it was released on January 19th, 1980, which would have been 2 days after my 10th birthday. And I actually wish I had seen this as a kid. If I had seen this in the movie, I wouldn't have gotten it, but I would have enjoyed it. Even if I didn't know who the Venoms were. Because I just love movies that are batshit crazy. I always have.
I mean, I watched it and I didn't quite get it. So, I mean...
Yeah.
and I don't think that's a failing on my part. I think that's because the plot was so all over the place.
Right.
It's like they tried to cram like 6 or 7 ideas into this one thing.
Oh yeah. Oh, then it's like the first fight is like something out of West Side Story, where they're not really hitting and they're more like dancing. You know, the whole beginning there on Earth looked like a play.
Yes. Yeah, it was weird.
But I guess that's, just par for the course for these kind of movies. Then we have, in the cast, we have David Chang, who played Zhu Bao. He was the guy from the first couple in Heaven. And he was in 148 films, including The One-Armed Swordsman, which I think that's a Shaw Brothers film we're going to have to get to. And then, of course, Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires was the Shaw Brothers and Hammer Films teaming up. So we are going to cover that one day also. But apparently this was the last film in which he worked with Chang Che.
Gotcha.
And then, of course, he didn't do too much. The first couple, we had Maggie Lee Lin Lin, who played the chick in the first couple. Then we've got the main character, basically, in the movie, who was second billed, but he ends up being the main character through the whole film, Li Yi Min, and he played the Heaven's chief guard, Xin Ling, / the taxi driver on Earth. You may recall he was Master Nan in the movie Life Gamble, which there are a lot of Life Gamble connections to this movie.
Yeah, like how they're both awful.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Like that's one connection.
And most of the actors were in both, but in none of the other Venom films. So
yeah, it was not my favorite by a long shot.
No, I agree with that. Alexander Fusheng was he played Chen Ding, who was the guy from the second couple, the couple on Earth. He also was in Life Gamble, and like I mentioned before, people went to this movie thinking it was an Alexander Fusheng vehicle because he was billed as the star. And his real life wife, Jenny Sang, she played his girlfriend there, she, and I think they're on screen for like less than 15 minutes, and then. We talked about him a little bit in Life Gamble because you may remember he was the dude that in a later film he was hanging from a wire and the wire broke and he fell on his head, and then in another movie he shattered all the bones in his right leg, and then he died at age 29 in a car accident.
Oh yeah. Now I remember. Yeah, that guy. Oh, unfortunate.
Yeah. I know, and like I said, he was married to Jenny Sang. Now she has an interesting past here. She was born to an Austrian expatriate father and a Chinese mother in the former Portuguese colony of Macau, but then her parents got divorced, and the father got custody of her, and he remarried another Chinese woman who already had kids, and she sort of felt alienated in this situation. She ends up moving back in with her mother in Taiwan, where she just went by the name Jenny. And she became what's called a Mando pop recording artist, which was Mandarin music fused with sort of a jazz influence. And she went on to fame in Hong Kong, eventually as a crossover canto pop person, which is, I guess, Cantonese music that's made similarly. And that allowed her to extend her versatility and even a little bit of international star appeal as a TV/film celebrity. And, of course, like we said, she was married to Alexander Fusheng for 7 years until he died at age 29. So, again, someone hugely popular, but for whatever reason, because they lost the funding, these guys are only in it for, like, a few minutes.
Which is unfortunate, especially where, you're a guy that, gets all kinds of jacked up every time you make a movie. You kind of need the extra income that you never know.
Right. So just a couple others I just want to mention here real quick. We had Chen Chi-lin. She played Red Dress. She was also in Life Gamble as Xiao Shang. And then, Johnny Wang Lung Wei was the hitman in this. He was the guy hired to take out the second couple. And he's listed as crime boss on the Hong Kong movie database. But he played Iron Robe from Kid with the Golden Arm.
I thought he looked kind of familiar.
Yeah. Are they all starting to look familiar to you? Like, not all, but a bunch of them?
You definitely see some repeat faces.
Yeah. So then we've got our Poodle Guards, Chang Sheng as Na Cha. Dick Wei, the pointy-nosed guy, he's Jin Cha. And then another guy, Siu Yuk Lung, played Mu Cha. The guy who played the Buddha of Mercy was named Yui Wing. And he only made like 33 films, and this was his second to last movie. And then, of course, we've got our Venoms. We've got Philip Kwok, who played Chen Tian Yang. Lo Meng was Wei Han Ting. Sun Chen was Lin Wei Gang. And Bruce Tong, also known as Chan Shen, he played Yan Tin Zan. We saw him previously also in Life Gamble as Wu Hao. He might have been, if I remember correctly, the guy that had the knives that he had in holsters that he would flip like guns.
Maybe.
I think. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I would have to double check.
And lastly, as I mentioned in the synopsis, we have Kara Hui, who played Sun Qian's girlfriend. She is the inaugural and 3-time recipient of the Hong Kong Film Award for Best Actress. Her portrayal of a mother in the 2009 film called At the End of Daybreak won her a bunch of acting awards. And on July 1st, 2018, she was awarded the Bronze Bahunia Star by the Chief Executive of Hong Kong Special Administration Region in recognition of her contribution to Hong Kong film industry and acting performances. So I guess her being in this is a huge deal, even though she's in it for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get a cameo by somebody who's so well respected, it's kind of like the Stan Lee cameos of all the Marvel films, or the fact that Matt Damon was in the third Thor film.
Oh yeah,
which I thought was hilarious.
But I don't. At the time she wasn't. Yeah, it was hilarious. At the time though, she wasn't a star. She was still starting out. I mean, don't forget, this is 1980, and she won these awards in the 2000s. But yeah, it is kind of funny, and it's also because of the fact that their budget got cut, and these people had to move on, and they couldn't get them back. It would have been an interesting film if the couple stayed. If they kept the funding. I wonder what direction they would have gone with it.
Yeah, with this film, I think it would have been a waste, just because there's so much nonsensical direction. Like, what would it have changed? Like anything as far as how the film was received or how you watched it? Probably not.
Right. I think though the sets were really cool. I did like the hell, because I was watching it the first time through and I'm going, geez, what was the budget on this thing? Because the sets look great, but then as you find out, it was done over the course of several years. So that's probably how they did it.
It makes sense. I mean, I think this is one of those things that would have to take quite some time to not only conceptualize, but convince other people that this is a project worth making, because while Chang Sheh may have been on drugs, I don't think everyone was on drugs. So in order to get people into your drug-fueled fever dream, there's a fair amount of convincing that has to take place.
Right. Did you notice, too, I think there was the Heavenly Guards at the beginning, they had, like, pumpkin spears, like in, who was it that had, was it in Life Gamble again? Where the dude had the spear with, like, the pumpkin-looking thing?
Yeah, there were a couple of them, and it was weird, and I like the weapon. I think it's kind of cool, but it's also, like, I don't, it seems so unwieldy. Like, how do you maintain, like, the balance and the weight on something like that?
Right. I don't know. It's bizarre. Especially if it really is metal. I mean, obviously it's a prop, so I'm thinking it's just going to smash open on somebody's head. But then if it's a real weapon, it would be so heavy on that end. Like you said, it's just unwieldy.
Yeah, like it definitely would. I mean, although I suppose it's not that much different from wielding a warhammer, because obviously that's
true.
all that weight's on one end. You'd probably use a similar type of fighting style for it.
Right. One thing I'm always curious about, too, in these movies, or like something about Asian films, Chinese and Japanese movies, they got this weird thing about ridiculously long tongues or dudes on stilts with puppet arms. It's like the bad guy's trying to talk, and he's talking like this because his tongue is hanging out of his mouth.
Yeah, it's like, I was like, what the hell is this guy doing? Is he eating fruit by the foot? Like, what's going on?
Right. I was thinking that, too.
Like, it's so weird. It's so weird why they would be doing that.
It's just something about, because, I mean, if you've ever seen, like, drawings and stuff from ancient China and Japan, they've always got these people with, like, ridiculously long tongues.
Yeah.
I guess the puppet thing, too, is just kind of scary. Like, at the very end, when they were all walking out of the portal, what was up with the one dude where the head pops off?
Yeah, or, like, the really long neck. It's like, what?
Yeah.
It lost me at that point. It's like, all right, so they're going back, and, like, so they're taking away... honestly... This probably would have been better served as an animated film.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Like, especially the transformations and everything at the end.
Right, yeah. You could have done a lot more creatively without having to worry about budget,
Yeah, and the look of the demons would have been much better. It kind of reminds me of like the Planet of the Apes films, because as those movies went on, like the budget was smaller and smaller, so they couldn't afford like all the makeup for everybody. So it would be like Roddy McDowell would get like the best makeup, and then like if anybody else was going to be shown, like they'd get decent makeup, but they wouldn't speak, and then like anybody who was an extra would just have like an ape mask, like
right. Yep. Yeah, you're right. The makeup jobs in this wasn't that good. But one thing I thought was good was, and it's too bad it had to be in this movie because I hope in another movie they do it, was we finally really got to see Sun Chen in action. I mean, first of all, he was rocking that 70s outfit, and then he was kicking ass, literally, and I just thought it was great to finally see that.
Yeah, I thought he was really good.
And then he'll jump when the Buddha of Mercy says, all right, you guys can go to Earth. They all jump down off of the ridge or whatever they were sitting on. He lands and then holds his foot up in the air because he can, just do that.
Yeah. Yeah, because he's that pliable.
Right. But I thought it was interesting, too, though, that if you think about it, the Venoms literally confronted their own demons. It was the people that were responsible for killing them, became demons. So it was sort of a little... not an analogy, but what's
allegory?
The word I'm looking for? Where a metaphor,
no.
Allegory or metaphor, where they were quote unquote confronting their demons. I think they didn't really play that up, but that's what I kind of got out of that.
Yeah, I mean, it made sense that they would be, I mean, they kept pitching it as revenge, but like, I don't feel like it was revenge. I feel like it was more like conquering of death.
Yeah. It's interesting, too, when they get, like, the taxi guy gets reincarnated, he still knows who he is.
Yeah, everybody knows who they are, and they know who their enemies are, even with the disguise.
Right. That was interesting. Did you notice, though, too, like, in the fights, particularly in the big, long 20-minute end fight, it's sort of a mix of kung fu and weaponry choreography with some contemporary fighting, slugfests going on, because... the four heroes lived in different time periods, so basically their martial arts are matched up with their respective time period, the fighting styles, I should say, of their respective time periods.
Makes sense. I mean, it's definitely a new direction of the Venom films, and one that I was not really pleased with.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think this isn't for everybody. I think if you want just a good, straightforward Venoms movie, you might want to avoid this one. But if you're looking for something batshit crazy, I'm always drawn to batshit crazy. I think then this is your cup of tea. But There was a couple. One last thing I just want to mention. There were a couple of funny lines in the end fight where one of the demons is listing off the characters. He's like, oh, so and so and so and so and some guy whose name I don't remember are escaping.
Yeah, that was kind of funny, but like the humor in this was severely lacking.
Right. And then Lu Feng, of course, goes, "Well, I was his sworn brother, but I killed him, so I guess now we're enemies."
Yeah, I was not overly pleased with the direction of this film. But again, I've said that several times, but we did get some quality fight scenes. That's about it.
Yeah.
We got some tender
So
love
those are your
songs.
final thoughts on the movie?
Final thoughts on the movie. If you're a completionist, definitely, watch this. Or if you just want to, like, get high and watch something interesting, I mean, this'll do it.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that.
I mean, other than that, yeah, I don't know. It's a weird one, and for a martial arts film, there's a shocking lack of. I mean, it's not. No, that's not true. There's a lot of martial arts in it, but just not from where you're looking. There's more singing than you would expect.
Right.
But other than that, yeah, I mean, give it a watch. I mean, I think this is one of the weaker ones we've seen. I would probably put this below Life Gamble just because Life Gamble actually had a plot and like there was a story to it that was easily followed and there was no romantic singing. Which if you're watching a musical and like that's what's going on, like I'm fine with like it has a place. Just as like if I'm watching Mary Poppins, I'm not looking for her to like be strolling down the street with the children, get mugged, and then she kicks the shit out of them and like breaks their necks. Like I'm not looking for that in stuff that's like way out of place.
Oh man, yeah, that's so true. I think we're this is not the last. It's the first, but it's not the last of this kind of film that we're going to encounter. I don't know what's in store for us for the rest of the Venom films. Obviously, I don't think this is necessarily a direction they're going in. I think they just changed it up just because.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with applying your creative spirit and trying something new. I mean, he got the movie made. Like
right, yeah. And he did a little bit of everything. You got a little bit of West Side Story in there. You got, some 70s music, some 70s groove going on there. Did you notice, by the way, their song kind of gets shut off, and it's a riff from the song Shaft, the theme song to Shaft.
I kind of thought that. I was like, oh, that sounds familiar. But, like, I was, not overly...
nauseous from the song?
No, it was just meh,
Yeah. So, all right, yeah, I agree with your assessment. I think, again, if you're a completist, it's definitely worth checking out. Or, like I said before, if you're into batshit crazy, definitely falls in that category. Not quite. There's a lot of other batshit crazy movies that I could recommend that are gory. This is a little bit gory. It's more horror, too. It's not really a kung fu film. It's more of a horror film, which Hammer. Shaw Brothers have done quite a few horror movies, which we will get to eventually.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even refer to I wouldn't even think of this as like a horror movie. Like I get where you're coming from, like because there is definitely some blood and guts and some over the top violence. Like, hey, help me lose so I can get my fingers cut off. Like, wait, what? Like, and that guy did that twice,
right?
Which just made me think like, oh, this is his eternal torment. He has to ask people to cut his fingers off for all eternity.
Right. So he doesn't gamble, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah, and I don't know.
There were a couple of guys in hell, though, that were funny. Like, what was it, like the real estate guy or the investment broker?
He's like, what can I invest
okay, so
in
where
now?
can I invest?
Yeah, do you have any tips for me? Like, send them to plow hell.
And then the alcoholic is standing under the giant bottle of gin or whatever it was, just guzzling it down. He's like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
Which, that would almost be like heaven to him, unless he, like, dies of liver cancer every other day or something.
Or he just, drowns in alcohol.
Right.
I don't know. It was weird. A
little bit of
Go ahead.
No, you go.
Say people should definitely watch it. Especially if you like the Shaw Brothers. Just to, I think, maybe appreciate the other movies all that much more.
That's true.
It's like, man, I was kind of tough on my criticism of these other movies, but after seeing this, I feel bad.
Well, what if we made like West Side Story, but we set it in Dante's Inferno?
Yeah, and so weird.
All right, well, that was Shaolin Hellgate, a.k.a. Heaven and Hell. We are going to take a break here, and when we come back, we're going to discuss My Name is Trinity from the year of my birth, 1970. You young whippersnappers.
We come from the retro future. We want you to be nostalgic for what's to come. A new channel and distribution network for smart people with bad taste, featuring content from Church of the Subgenius, Creature Features, Cinema, Insomnia, Sleazy P. Martini and Guar, Troma, Corey Maccabee, horror, sci-fi, Saturday morning cartoons, midnight movies, and assorted trash we love. Add our channel OSI 74 to your Roku player or visit OSI74.com. All systems go.
Prepare for a spine-tingling, nerve-shattering podcast featuring all your favorite monsters. You won't believe your ears when you listen to Monster Kid Radio. Hear your host, Derek M. Cook, and his ever-rotating stable of guests discuss your favorite classic and sometimes not-so-classic monster movies. Subscribe to Monster Kid Radio through iTunes or Stitcher, or visit monsterkidradio.net before the next weekly episode of Monster Kid Radio. Go through the archives for interviews with Sarah Karloff, Victoria Price, and Joel Hodgson. Listen to discussions about movies like Creature from the Black Lagoon, Island of Terror, and King Kong. And don't forget convention coverage from Monster Bash and the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival. Classic monsters, modern talk, and the head of Rondo Hatton, only on Monster Kid Radio!
Hey folks, I just wanted to take a minute here to tell you about the hosting service that we use at Haven Podcasts. Podserve.fm. Podcast hosting has never been easier. They do all the work to get your podcast on Apple Podcasts and other major podcast networks. They help you navigate the podcasting world, whether you're brand new or have years of experience. Folks, I can't tell you how happy I am with their service. When I first started this podcast, I searched around intensely for the right hosting platform. I found Podserve and used their simple 4-step process, and in a short amount of time, my podcasts were on the internet and available through all the major podcast networks. And their customer support is unreal. Every time I goof things up and make a mistake, like posting the wrong show to the wrong feed, I email them, and I kid you not, within minutes I get a response and the problem is resolved. And they're the only podcasting host that actually helps you get listeners. Other podcast hosts stop at podcast upload and don't help promote your podcast. Well, Podserve makes sure your podcast is seen by thousands of people. The promotion is free, and they put you on podparadise.com, which has over 5,000 visits a day from avid podcast listeners and is growing every day. Each day, Pod Paradise selects 5 podcasts to spotlight on their front page. Maybe yours could be there soon. Podserve's pricing is simple. Only $19 a month. That's it. No tiered pricing platform, just one low fee. For $19 a month, you get unlimited storage, unlimited podcasts, free podcast promotion, your podcast on all platforms, detailed download analytics, one-on-one customer support. You pay month to month, and you can cancel at any time. And when you sign up, you get 14 days free. You don't even have to give them your credit card. I love their service so much I put a reminder in my phone to add my credit card when the 14 days was almost up. I couldn't give them my $19 fast enough. I'm telling you, I really didn't believe it until I actually signed up and saw my podcasts on everything from iTunes to Stitcher and Spotify and more in a ridiculously short amount of time. So if you've got a podcast and you don't have a hosting platform, I highly recommend podserve.fm. Check them out.
Hello, this is Rod Barnett. I'm the host of The Bloody Pit, the podcast that examines films from across the decades. On The Bloody Pit, we have several ongoing series of shows within the show focused on specific things in genre cinema that I and my co-hosts find fascinating. There's a long-running series focused on Italian maestro Antonio Margheriti's films from the 1960s all the way up through 1990. There's an on-again, off-again series focused on 1970s science fiction films. There's an in-depth look at the Western movies that William Castle made before he struck out on his own and became the horror auteur that we know and love. A look at the classic Coffin Joe films from Brazil. And our long-term project to look at every Universal horror film made in the 1940s. That's a long project, people. It's going to take us a long time. Sprinkled in amongst those are various other episodes focused on other stranger areas of cinema, like Lucio Fulci, Dario Argento, and even some obscure British crime films from time to time. So join me and my rotating crew of co-hosts as we examine the stranger side of cinema through an exploitation lens. Except when we don't. Yeah, you never really know exactly what to expect on The Bloody Pit. So join me for The Bloody Pit.
They call me Trinity.
Hey, Trinity. They say you got the fastest gun around.
Is that what they say?
What's going on here?
You sure you two fellas are brothers?
Yep. Same mother.
Well, I'm not looking for trouble.
Well, they'll be stiff before they can draw. You're still quick on the draw, I see.
But I bet you'll manage to mess things up on me. I don't know how, but I'm sure you'll do it. I suppose you got nothing to do with this, right?
No. Who's got the time? I'm already busy doing nothing.
With the restless gun.
I advise you to watch the deputy. He is very fast.
You hear that, Mortimer? The major says the deputy's very fast.
They offended the law. They said I was a son of a no.
That is. How are we going to settle that?
You gonna handle it alone?
Sweet dream. I just woke up. You take your share.
Pardon me, brother.
Can I go to bed, or you got something else planned for tonight?
Well, I really came for a drink.
I don't think so.
So the second film that we're discussing today is 1970's They Call Me Trinity, which is yet another Terence Hill, Bud Spencer vehicle. And funnily enough, it is not a threequel to any of the films that we've watched. This is the first in a two-film series, I believe.
Yes.
The sequel is called Trinity Is Still My Name, which, I mean, sort of makes sense because why would you change your name? But this is an excellent film. I love this. But let's get into the plot synopsis a little bit. Trinity is a lazy ne'er-do-well gunfighter with unnaturally fast drawing ability and marksmanship. He is dragged by his horse on a nice little, like a litter is what they would call it. You know, it's kind of just made these straps and stuff, and he's like almost like a gurney or a stretcher. And
Right.
He ends up in this town or a way station. It's not really a town. There's only a couple of buildings there, which is a way station and a restaurant. He encounters a pair of bounty hunters with an injured Mexican prisoner. Trinity calmly takes the Mexican away from the two men, killing them before they can shoot him in the back. Prior to that, though, he eats an entire pan of beans and an entire loaf of bread. He's been on the road for a while. So the pair reach a small town where they witness the local sheriff, a big burly man, obviously Bud Spencer, with a similarly fast drawing ability, gunning down 3 men after they harass him for not allowing one of their criminal friends to be released. So they're sitting there like, yeah, let our friend out or there's going to be trouble. And he's like, no, there's not. Not for me, anyways. So it becomes apparent that Trinity and the man, known as Bambino, which obviously is Italian for baby, or something along those lines, because that's what they used to call Babe Ruth, the Grand Bambino.
Right.
Trinity and the man Bambino are brothers. Bambino is merely posing as the new sheriff of the small town while he awaits the arrival of his gang from the penitentiary from which he escaped, following a run-in with the actual sheriff, who incidentally just took the same way as Bambino on his way to his new post. And he discusses that. He's like, yeah, there was a guy, he was following me, but he wasn't really following me. He was just happened to be going in the same direction, but I didn't know that, so I shot him, and I just took over his position. But it turns out that the sheriff is not dead. Bambino is not happy to see his troublemaking brother, but the two form a temporary partnership to deal with Major Harriman, who is attempting to run a group of pacifist Mormon farmers off their land with the intention of using their property to graze his own horses. The fact that these horses are valuable and unbranded explains Bambino's grudging willingness to work with his little brother, even though he considers Trinity to be a shiftless bum without ambition. Now, there's a great line, where the Mormons are like, oh, we just want this little bit of land, and the major's like, you have 200,000 acres. Like, how much do you need? He's like, where'd you get all these cows? Oh, God sent them. It's like, oh, I want this land for my horses. Oh, well, we'll share it. No, we won't. It's like, wow, this guy's a jerk. Trinity has, however, it says that he fell in love with 2 Mormon sisters. There are a couple of cute blondes that he helped out earlier in the... I don't know about falling in love with them, but he's definitely like, hey, 2 cute blondes. So he seems generally concerned with the Mormon settlers' welfare, so he eventually persuades Bambino and his henchmen, who finally show up, to help with the pacifist Mormons, to train the pacifist Mormons to fight, which is a hilarious scene. In the final battle, the Mormon leader finds in the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible that there is a time for fighting, and the Mormons are unleashed against Major Harriman's group. I don't know about unleashed, but yeah, they use dirty fighting tricks that they just learned from Trinity and Bambino. Bambino is flabbergasted and infuriated to learn that Trinity has given the Major's horses to the Mormons because they're very, very valuable, and there were supposed to be 20 that he was going to try and steal because he's a crook. Trinity is about to be happily married to the 2 Mormon sisters when he learns that being married means actually having to work, causing them to run off after Bambino, who angrily sends him off in the opposite direction. He goes, well, I'm going to California, which means you're going east. After Bambino departs for California, the real sheriff appears, and Trinity is like, oh, yeah, I saw those guys. They just robbed me, and they were going to take my boots, but they saw you coming. They went that way. And so Trinity lays back down in his little gurney there and follows everybody off into the distance.
That was such a dick move.
Oh, it really was. But he had to catch up with them somehow.
Right. I love this movie.
It was weird. Oh, it was so good.
Yeah. There was so much to love about it. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I definitely see where it the thematic relation, with all the religious stuff to Shaolin Hellgate.
Oh yeah. Jeez, I didn't even think of that.
Oh, I thought you did it on purpose.
No. Not at all. I'm telling you, man, with the Shaolin, with the Shaw Brothers movies, we just go in order of release order now. And with these,
all of these have
happen
had
to be doing
some connection.
Yeah, and we just happen to be doing Terence. That's the thing. That's the great thing about the show is we're finding the parallels between the spaghetti westerns and the Shaw Brothers movies.
Yeah, it's and it just happens to be lining up like every single time.
Yeah. With the exception of, what was it? There was Life Gamble, and then there was, there was the gambling one. I think it was Ace High. Ace High.
Ace High, yeah, that sounds right.
We could have paired those up if we had known ahead of time. I mean, I'm kind of like you. I don't really truly know what these movies are about before we watch them. I may, in the last few films, have had to check with the Shaw Brothers just to make sure the Venoms were in it, because we had that one incident where it was the wrong movie. But
yeah, the Daredevil one.
Yeah.
Which wasn't actually the right movie.
Right.
Like, you're like, oh, this one has the Venoms in it, but, like, when we went to watch it, the movie that they were showing, it's almost like we went to go see, like, Terminator 2, but instead they screened, like, RoboCop.
Right. It's like, I even paid for it, too. I paid my $3 on Amazon. I was like, what the fuck? This is not the right movie.
Yeah, what kind of bullshit is this?
But I got to say, there's just so much to love about this movie, and it's my new favorite now. I think it's right up there with Pistol for Ringo, at least in my book. You know, every little thing. Like, you can't look away from this movie. You can't be, like, playing a game on your phone or reading the paper or whatever. You got to watch, because every little detail in every scene, there's something there. There's eye movement, eye contact, there's dialogue that's muttered here and there, there's background dialogue. And every single scene is packed with hilarious stuff, but it's a comedy, but it's not a slapstick comedy. I think the comedy comes out of the dialogue and the characters' reactions to things. Would you agree?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment of it. This one for me, yeah, like, it's one of the better ones. It definitely lets Bud Spencer really show off his, I'm a big tough guy persona, but also, like, gives him, the scene at the beginning when he shoots and kills the three guys that are harassing him, and you get to see, like, oh, he's also got some quick draw skills as well. It's not just, he's this huge guy that nobody can beat up, because he's such an imposing physical presence. But he's also got, some other skills as well. So that was kind of nice. Although, of course, they had the obligatory, 9 against 2 fight where he fights 8 guys and Terence Hill fights 1.
Yeah. It's like, come on, there's only 9 of them.
Yeah, he says, you want me to join you? It's like, well, I just woke up, so you're going to take your fair share. And apparently his fair share is 1.
Right. But in that scene where Bud Spencer's going up against those 3 guys at the very beginning, even Trinity says to the drunken Mexican, he's like, you watch. He's like, those guys aren't even going to get their guns out of their holsters before they hit the ground.
Yep. Yeah, it's speed. Speed is speed, man.
Yeah. So one quick aside I wanted to mention, because you were talking about the gurney that he was being dragged on, which, first of all, how does the horse know where to go? I think the horse was like Comet on Briscoe County.
I think it was just, well, the horse is just going to go, and when the horse stopped, he'd get up. Like, I don't think he had a real destination.
Well, at the end, he told it to go to California.
I think he just pointed him west.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like, yeah, go until you're tired.
The thing he's being dragged on, the Indian, I forgot what the word you said was, but there's an Indian term for it. What is it?
Litter.
A litter. Because the Indian term for it is a travois.
Yes.
So that's that I
saw.
I
didn't say that because I was never sure how to pronounce it, because I was going to pronounce it the French way.
Oh, yeah.
So I just used a different word.
I know, it's an Indian thing with a French name. But,
yeah.
And the scene with him eating the beans, actually, so this kind of a spaghetti western, where it being a comedy, it's a sort of a subgenre of the subgenre of spaghetti western, and they're called fagioli westerns because of the beans that he eats in this. Because this movie really kind of changed things for spaghetti westerns and said it was okay to make them be funny as well as being entertaining. And so yeah, fagioli westerns are because that means beans, of course, in Italian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I like that scene at the beginning where it's like, oh, if you have money, I have beans, and he like brought him over and he like scooped a bowl, some onto his bowl. Yeah. And he just kind of looks at the guy and he gives him a second scoop, and he goes to walk away. He's like, just leave it, and he pours all of the beans back in, and he just like demolishes the entire like huge skillet. Like this isn't a normal skillet. Like this would take 2 burners on a regular stove. Like this thing is massive, and it's steaming, and it's just like I like beans, but I don't think I could eat what looked to be, I don't know, 2 pounds of beans and wash it down with an entire bottle of tequila and a loaf of bread.
Right.
And that bread's got to be like 60% sawdust because they're in the middle of the desert.
Right.
Like, they're... Ugh. But hey, it worked for him. That's all that matters.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they set it up well, too, because when he tells the guys that his name's Trinity, all of a sudden they're shaking, and they're like, ooh, the right hand of the devil. So he just takes the Mexican guy that they've got there. I don't know if there was a bounty on that guy or they were going to take him. I think they were trying to take him in for a bounty, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he just basically takes the Mexican guy, goes outside, and the 2 bad guys open the window to shoot at him, and he doesn't even look. He just shoots behind himself and gets them both.
He does that a lot. Like, there's that whole... It's like, oh, you did this and did that and 1 castration. Like, yeah. Because he shot the guy right in the dick.
Yeah.
He was seated, and the guy was, like, on a balcony above him in a saloon, and he just shot him straight. Like, first of all, that bullet's not going to stop there.
Right.
Like...
It's going to go up through his skull.
Yeah, But, again... It's part of that comedy you're talking about.
Right. I guess the fact that he could shoot people like that without even looking was inspired by a couple of comics, like I guess newspaper strips, if you will. There was a Belgian cartoonist named Morris who wrote a comic called Lucky Luke, and he was quote-unquote the man who shoots faster than his shadow. And then there was another Italian comic strip called Coco Bill about a short-tempered but good-natured cowboy who helps sheriffs to capture criminals. So they said that was a little bit of inspiration there for Trinity, which was, I mean, he was just so cool in everything he did.
Yeah, and if you've never read, and I think I've talked about this before, the Dark Tower series by Stephen King, starting with the Gunslinger, like. There's a lot of Sergio Leone, man with no name type of inspiration to this character.
Yeah.
But I think with some of the other characters that you get to see along the way, like there's definitely like some Lee Van Cleef and some Terence Hill mixed into some of these other characters.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. And Terence Hill was so good in this. He just sort of had this wide-eyed, childlike look about him. Like he didn't have a care in the world. And he was just, wherever the wind blew him, that's where he ended up. But he was also kind of a nice guy. He'd help out people if they looked like they were in trouble. So, and he was just cool. Like he wouldn't even sit on his horse properly. He'd sit on, what was it? He was sitting with his feet up on the horse's back in the end shot there when they were leaving.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what he does. Like he's just, it's like a nice, I'm gonna be as relaxed and carefree as possible, and that's just the way the news goes. Like that's just how I'm gonna be. I think that really reflects on his character not wanting to be shot in the back.
Yeah, that's true. And it was funny because Bambino's always trying to get rid of him, and he's like, "Why can't you get a respectable job like a cattle rustler or a horse thief or something?" And he's like, "Nah, I got too much. I'm too busy doing nothing."
Yeah.
So I thought this was interesting because the film, even though they had done the previous trilogy that we've already covered, this film really catapulted Spencer and Hill into international acclaim. And it's inspired, apparently, a shit ton of wannabe action flicks that were mostly lame, but we will eventually check some of them out. But it even instigated another European studio to make carbon copy films with guys who looked like Hill and Spencer. There's this guy, Paul Smith and Michael Colby, and it was, the first one that they did was a film called Carambola from 1974. And what's really funny, and this kind of goes back to when we did God Forgives, But I Don't, the guy, Paul Smith, he is the guy who looks like Bud Spencer, and he is actually the actor who played Bluto in the Robin Williams Popeye movie. And I think we mentioned that resemblance when we first talked about God Forgives.
Yeah, you referenced that, and that makes a lot of sense. Thinking about that movie and thinking about Bud Spencer. Yeah, like there's a striking resemblance between the two actors.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Big burly guys.
Oh yeah. And it's funny because they had different guys that they had originally in mind for this film. It wasn't originally I almost said Bud and Lou, Bud and Terence. But Barboni first offered it to Franco Nero, and he didn't want to do it. And I think Woody Strode was considered for the role. And this guy, Peter Martell, was supposed to play the character, but for whatever reason, he lost out to Terence Hill again, which I think happened in God Forgives. He had broken his foot, or he broke his toe. When he found out his wife was cheating, or when the wife found out he was cheating on someone else, he kicked something and broke his toe. So Terence Hill got that job, and then I forget the excuse here, or at least I couldn't find it online, but once again, he lost the role to Terence Hill, who became an international star, and who remembers who Pete Martell is,
Yeah, there's a lot of those stories, and you'd rather be on the Terence Hill side.
Right. But what's interesting about the director, let's talk about the director and the cast here. We've got Enzio Barboni. He said he was trying to demystify the Italian Western. He's quoted as saying, "As a director of photography, I had done many Westerns, and one thing about them that made me laugh was their use of violence as an end in itself, which really irked me as a viewer. I believed that Westerns ought to be amusing. There's something inherently comic about them, in part because they started off from the imitation of a world that we've only dreamed about. It wasn't our world. We've never even been there. We've never seen it." And then so I feel like, we've seen a lot of these films now that were sort of, Hollywood had been doing Westerns since the beginning of film. And I think the spaghetti Westerns came along most prominently in '64 with A Fistful of Dollars. But ever since then, you've had these directors that were trying to demystify it and, just deconstruct them. And originally, I was trying to figure out what that meant. I'm like, why are they doing it? You've just started this genre pretty much, in '64, now it's '70. Why are you trying to deconstruct it? And I think using that terminology, at least in my opinion, and I'd like to know your opinion on this, my opinion is that they're just trying to make a movie in the genre, but try to do something that hadn't been done before rather than do the same old, same old. So it ends up coming across as deconstructing the genre. Does that make sense?
Yes. I think anytime you can kind of advance your genre and branch it off into, a different type of subgenre, you should take that opportunity. Like you're saying with this film, like injecting some comedy into a Western, which is normally like very serious. And, I think that kind of gave birth to the buddy cop films of the 80s and 90s,
Right.
Where you're going to find cross-pollination of genres like horror comedy and dramatic comedy. Like if you start mixing genres together, like you're gonna start getting some like really cool results. Like mix a Western film with space, and you get Star Wars.
Right.
Or a samurai film. I mean, samurai films were Westerns before Westerns came out. That's pretty much...
Right.
So, you take the samurai Western, set it in space, and you've got Star Wars.
Yeah, that's true.
It's when you do that, you mix a couple of things together. It's like, I don't know if this is going to work. Sometimes it'll blow up in your face, but a lot of times, you come up with something. Maybe you don't do it that great, but maybe somebody down the road comes up and says, "Oh, I'm going to do this, and it's going to be awesome."
Yeah. I mean, heck, somebody ought to mix West Side Story with Dante's Inferno and see what happens,
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say with the last one, like that was not the best experiment, but, he went for it, he did it, and, this film exists, and, I'm sure there are other films that have, taken that route. Like, again, What Dreams May Come by Richard Matheson, which I think was written around the same time. You get a similar type of, journey through hell.
Right. Yeah. Oh, man. But this was, I thought, really well done. Of course, Trinity is quoted as being the right hand of the devil, and then he mentions that Bambino is the left hand of the devil, which I thought was cool. So the devil must be their mother, right?
Well,
Who was sort of a running joke.
Yeah, she's definitely a woman of ill repute.
Yeah,
according to them.
But if you insult her, they'll knock you on your ass for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's, just because they say it doesn't mean you can say it.
Right. Then we've got Farley Granger, who played Major Harriman, and he's one of those actors that I've heard the name, through my whole life. I don't think I've ever really, I have seen a couple of films he's in, not realizing who he was, but to me, doesn't that sound like he would be in westerns all the time if your name was Farley Granger?
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a western name. It's either that or you're like the guy that gets coffee.
Yeah, exactly. He was in Hitchcock's Rope and Strangers on a Train, which those were the films that I had seen him in. He was also in 1981's The Prowler, and then he did a lot of soap operas through the 70s and 80s. One thing I thought was funny, especially in the end fight, when they've got the gun on him through the wagon, the side of the wagon, and they're talking to him. His voice sounded just like Harvey Korman from Blazing Saddles. It was just uncanny how it just sounded like him the way, and I think his voice kind of got a little higher because he was worried about getting killed.
Yeah, listening to him, I was like, this guy sounds like he did some sort of voiceover work or something, because he's definitely got a very unique, comedic, cartoony voice.
Yeah. And what's interesting is, did you notice they were all, for the most part, I didn't see anyone who wasn't speaking Italian. They looked like they were all speaking English.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, it didn't seem like they were being dubbed over all that much either.
Yeah. I still think that they did all the voice dubbing in post, but they just used their own voices, like we've seen in the past. Because I just pulled up I found an interview with Bud Spencer and Terence Hill from the 80s. They were making an action movie here in the U.S., and I posted it on the East Meets the West Facebook page, if you guys listening get a chance to check it out. And it was really interesting, but they were speaking, but they had very slight Italian accents. So I wonder if when they did the voiceovers, they had a dialogue coach to get them to sound more like they were from the West, the Old West,
I think that's a quality part to spend your budget on. Like, that's definitely a good piece. Right.
Because you want it to succeed. That's the whole point. And did you notice too? Recently, I posted a newspaper article that I dug out for Boot Hill, and it's the Trinity boys are back. But Boot Hill came out in '69, and this came out in '70. So this had been released here before Boot Hill was, because it was just such a big hit.
Right. Yeah. It's funny when you start talking about like. International distribution, like, you're going to get some things before you get other things, and, it's like, let me use this as a promotion for that, because this is what people are going to be familiar with, as opposed to, this, even though this one just came out, we're going to reference something that, has been out for years the other way.
Right. Well, and especially, all right, so Boot Hill didn't do that well, but then this one is a huge hit. Let's dust off Boot Hill, because there was no such thing as, on demand or videotape or anything. So let's dust it out and put it out again and show people, hey, look, the Trinity boys are back.
Right. Yeah, it's like, yeah, this movie came out a couple years ago. Yeah, it's weird the way they had to kind of market it. But,
yeah,
I mean, do what you got to do. It's like those people that use the like the random quotes on movies where it's like, like this was way better, and then it's like an ellipses, it's like ... than I could have hoped for, and it's like, right. You find out the full quote is like, this was even better than being eaten alive by rabid badgers, which is the best death I could have hoped for. Like, so it's, yes, technically they said those words, but there was some other stuff in between.
In between, right?
But yeah, there's marketing is a weird thing. It's
right.
Like, yeah, I would rather get punched in the face 40 times than see this movie more than once, and then people are like, see this movie more than once. Like,
right.
It's like, yeah, there's the quote. So if you're ever giving a review of something, make sure that your sentence is very clear and can't be...
Right. Very tight.
It's like, I didn't like this movie. And then it's just like, I, ... liked this movie.
Right.
It's like, wait a minute, why is that? Oh, it's unrelated. What do you mean it's unrelated?
That's funny. You know what's interesting too is you had referenced earlier the fact that sort of these kind of movies gave way to the buddy action cop movies of the 80s and 90s. And Terence Hill and Bud Spencer did quite a few buddy cop movies in the 80s, maybe even into the 90s. So I think, Patsy, you and I talked off mic about maybe doing specials down the road where we cover some of these actors in other movies that they were in. And I think it would be fun. Just every time I'm doing research now, like especially in this movie, I kept coming across these other movies that they made, and I'm like, ooh, I want to see that. Ooh, I want to see that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's it's again, like, we were talking about with cameos and stuff for the last film, it's always nice to see actors that you like. It's like, oh, that's a guy from The Thing, every time,
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I think that's a good idea. Give kind of show that these guys aren't just one-trick ponies.
Right, exactly. So moving on, we've got Stefan Zacharias, who played Jonathan, who I thought was a hilarious character. He was the guy that was sort of the caretaker of the sheriff's office, and he was he was dirty, but he was very concerned about cleanliness, constantly knocking Trinity's feet off of the sheriff's desk, and taking care of the prisoners and stuff. He was in Man of La Mancha. But most people, I think, listening to this show might remember him as the prisoner in the movie Ice Pirates. He was also in The Frisco Kid with Gene Wilder, which I did see in the theaters, although I don't really remember it all that much. That was a Western. And he was in the exploitation sequel, Exterminator 2, another movie that I saw in the theater because my parents and I liked the first one so much we went and saw the second one. So, what'd you think of his character?
I liked pretty much all of the characters in this, all of this, hold on, sorry, I'm still, I explained to you off air earlier, I still have, vaccine brain sometimes. I enjoyed all of the characters from this. There wasn't anybody that I was like, oh my God, I hate this guy, I hope he gets shot in the face. Everybody served their purpose and served it well. I understand, even the head of the Mormons there, his whole thing is like, well, we're going to stick by our religious beliefs. It's like, yeah, but these guys come in and they trash everything, they wreck your barn, and they smack you around, and it's like, the Mexican guy kept coming in and mezcal, they called him. He kept coming in and slapping people, then it's like, turn the other cheek, and then he'd slap him again, it's like, so there were definitely characters you didn't like, but it's not because...
But you were supposed to not like them.
Right, it's not because the actor was terrible or right. It was just, executed poorly. This was done well. These guys did a good job portraying their characters.
Oh, yeah. Well, I even liked the characters of Weasel and Timid that showed up finally. They were Bambino's buddies there.
Yeah, they definitely played their role well. I mean, for bit parts, they played what they were supposed to do, and they did it, I think, the way they were supposed to do it, so...
They were like NPCs called in at the last minute to help out.
Yeah, almost like the guys that always end up coming in to give exposition and then leave in all the Shaw Brothers films.
Right. Unless they're dying.
Yes. It's like, oh, I'll make it through. Everything will be fine. Oh, I'm dead.
Yeah. We get this guy, Michelle Chimarosa, who played the drunken Mexican, and his character I thought was hilarious. I think that could easily have been a really annoying character. But I just thought it was funny, and they never knew what to do with him. Well, what do we do with him? Just get him drunk and make him pass out.
Yeah, I mean that's the best way to. I think that's the best way to do it. Make sure he stays out of their way.
Because he almost at one point, when the real sheriff showed up and he had the photo or the wanted posters of Bambino and Timid and Weasel, he was almost going to say something because he looked at them and he started to, and then Jonathan grabs him and goes, yeah, okay, let's go, and takes him out, and that's why he took him with him to the Mormon ranch.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was that was one of the better parts of the film.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this. Like, I had a lot of fun. I was like, all right, I'm definitely keeping my interest focused on this movie because it's well done. I was kind of looking forward to this one a little more. Like, I got to see a little bit of the beginning last night, but like I was having a hard time like staying awake because of everything that's going on. But like this, it's so much fun, and like Terence Hill just plays this character like with such nonchalance. I love it.
Oh yeah. Did you? Oh, actually, you did notice because you and I texted each other last night about this. The theme song "Trinity Titoli" was later used as the closing theme for Quentin Tarantino's Western Django Unchained.
Yeah,
in 2012.
And boy, did they use it! Like they used it all the time. Like
it was pretty much the only music.
Yeah. It's just over and over and over and over.
This movie, it did so well at the box office. It was, I think, second to For a Few Dollars More, the Sergio Leone Clint Eastwood movie,
which I still haven't seen.
Nope, we will get to those. We're going to get to the Leone films. I think I want to save those for like when we have an anniversary, like a 25th, 50th episode kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, this like I said, this thing created its own subgenre. It spawned an entire army of false sequels, loose sequels, pale imitations, and some good sequels as well. And then of course they were referred to as we said before, the fagioli westerns, like Pasta Fagioli. And but that end fight, another one like the last movie, almost 20 minutes, and apparently it's one of the most elaborate fistfights ever put on film.
Yeah, it was really good.
And I just loved it.
I was thinking about that. I was like, man, the choreography for this is like rivaling some of the Shaw Brothers films, and of course we have to have the obligatory, Terence Hill swinging on something, showing off his acrobatic skills.
Oh yeah, I mean he was doing things like what he'd run past two guys, jump on the table, do a handspring, and kick them in the face with his feet, and then flip over and kick another guy. It was so good.
Plus, like I said, the swinging from like that support beam, swinging back and forth, because that's just what he does. Like he does that in every movie almost. He definitely did it in Ace High, climbing up shit, and like it was fun. Like it's I definitely really enjoyed this one, and I can't wait to see the next one because we have the sequel coming up. Obviously, the what's his name there?
My name is
They still call me Trinity, or my name is.
They still call me Trinity.
Make sure when you call me, make sure you still call me Trinity. Just don't call me late for dinner.
Right.
Like I don't know.
Right. One other thing I wanted to mention, I loved when, like I had said before, all the little, if you got to really pay attention to the little dialogue in the background, and every time the sheriff, every time Bambino's walking down the street and someone walks past him and they're like, "Hey, sheriff," and he's like, "Shut up."
Yeah.
Every single time.
Which is great because like it definitely gives you that he's gruff, but I would almost want to call him like gruff but lovable, because like that's kind of how he's portraying himself.
Yeah, he's just so surly, but his surly reactions were hilarious.
Oh yeah, he's great. He's for a guy that doesn't have a lot to do. You know what I mean? Like they don't give him a lot. Like he sure is able to get a lot of range.
Oh yeah, but he does your favorite scene. He does your favorite move, the Hulk.
Oh yeah, take on 25 guys at once. Yeah.
That was so awesome, and you just saw that coming, and like it was just so cool.
I was wondering what he was gonna like. I honestly was waiting for him to pick them all up.
Right.
Like, is he gonna carry them? Like, what are we doing here?
Well, there's that one shot where Trinity calls to him in the middle of the final battle, and he's standing there holding a guy by his belt buckle in his right hand like it was nothing. And he's like, "Huh? Oh, and he drops the guy on the ground again. Goes off to whatever Trinity needed.
Yeah, because he's just awesome. Like,
yeah,
I really liked this one. This one was a lot of fun. Yeah, I would definitely highly recommend this to anybody. Like, even if you're just starting out getting into westerns, maybe start with this one. Although this does set the bar fairly high.
It does. You could almost start with what was the second Giuliano Gemma film that we saw? Return of Ringo.
Yeah, I was going to say the Ringo
because they
movies.
only get better from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, if you're going to watch the two Ringo films back to back, you got to remember that they are all the same actors, but none of the same characters.
Except for Ringo.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this was good, and this was cool and refreshing, almost like a beverage.
Yeah.
It was one of those movies when I watched it, and I knew I was going to watch it again. I couldn't wait to watch it again. If I had time, when I did watch it, I would have turned around and, just started it over from the beginning, because there's just so much to it. I mean, you and I couldn't even cover. If we were to cover every single joke and detail in the movie, it's like you might as well just watch the film. That's how good it was.
Yes. Yeah, like there's a lot of really excellent humor. There's a lot of really excellent sight gags, like you're saying with the... him just hanging on to the guy during like the big fight at the end. It's a lot of fun. Right. It's just so good.
Yeah. So all right. So I take that your final recommendation is that people should see this one, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This one is excellent, and I think anytime these two guys pair up, it's worth watching.
Absolutely. I agree. And I think this is on Amazon right now. You probably got to pay a couple bucks for it, but it's well worth it. It's just such a fun movie. There is a DVD double set out there, which I don't think is too expensive. I think it's like $25 or something. But yeah, I will. I'm going to post the link for the Shaw Brothers film DVD where I got that from. By the way, folks, we are in no way affiliated with the company that we got the DVD from. But I just want to put it out there. So if you're, listening to the show and you want to see these movies, there is a place where you can get them from. So that was our review today of Heaven and Hell. And my name is Trinity. And our next film, I believe, is going to be The Two Champions of Shaolin for the Shaw Brothers. And my name is... They still call me my name is Trinity, or...
Yeah, my name is still... You can call me Trinity, but just don't call me late for dinner.
Right. And this is the Trinity films. It's like, how do I describe it? There are, I think we've mentioned before, at least I've mentioned to you, Pat, that there are, like, for example, there's 26 Django movies, but only one is the true sequel to the original, and that was made like 20 years later. There's a zillion Sabata films. There's a zillion Ringo films. And I think there's a whole bunch of Trinity films, too, and they're just not related to this one. So there's only just the one true sequel, and then, down the road, we'll come back to these. For now, we'll just stick with these two. And I think the one we're going to do after the second Trinity film is going to be called My Name is Nobody, which is Terence Hill and Henry Fonda. Bud Spencer is not in that one, but I've heard very good things about it. So
I'm looking forward to that one, then.
Yeah. So, Patsy, why don't you tell the good folks where they can find you online?
Best places to find me, if you go to Facebook, we have the Throwdown Thursday Facebook group, the Loudest Sports Show Facebook group, where I also raffle off sports memorabilia. We did, last week, we did an O.J. Simpson. We've got some Magic Johnson stuff coming up, like not your typical Magic Johnson stuff either, like... I have a couple of mini football helmets autographed by Magic Johnson coming in, which is, like I said, not your typical stuff. So, I try to find some unique things. But that's also a podcast that you can find every Friday on Spotify. Throwdown Thursday, obviously, as Rigor mentioned, we just celebrated our 250th episode. That's also on Spotify and YouTube. We have the YouTube channel, Throwdown Thursday podcast, and all of our stuff is kind of under that umbrella. So you'll find, some clips from games. When I find weird stuff in games, I'll kind of post that, 10, 15-second clips, and live episodes of the Loudest Sports Show, live episodes of Throwdown Thursday, and that's pretty much the best place. Oh, you can also find me on Amazon. I wrote a book called How Much Do You Tip an Exorcist? You can check that out. It's only $10. So for $10, you can find out how much you're supposed to tip an exorcist.
That's awesome. Oh, man, definitely. I got to have you on Then Is Now so we can talk about that. I'll have to buy the book and read it first, and then we'll talk about it.
Oh, I think it's a fun little read. It's there's a lot of really excellent drawings by my friend Jeanette Andromeda, who is a supremely talented artist. I did a lot of 2-sentence stories and horror haikus, and then there's 10 short stories, and there's some filler material in there, like, terrible superpowers and movies that I'd like to see the Asylum make.
Nice.
Yeah, just a bunch of fun stuff like that.
Awesome, dude. Well, obviously, thanks once again for being my co-host here on the East Meets the West. And folks, don't forget that the East Meets the West is part of the Dorkening Podcast Network. So please check us out there and check out all the other great shows at thedorkening.com. You can send us your thoughts on today's episode to the East Meets the West 42 at gmail.com. And check out our website at havenpodcasts.com, where you can also find our sister show, Then Is Now, where we discuss all the cool stuff that you may have missed out on and stuff that you should know. And please go wherever you download your podcast from and leave us a great review if you like this show so that more people can find the show. And you can check out our East Meets the West YouTube page at youtube.com/user/UncleDeath1, which is where you'll find that and all our podcasts as well as other fun stuff. And make sure when you go to YouTube to not only hit the subscribe button, but also share it with your friends and get them to subscribe as well. That is all the time we have today. Join us again on our next episode of The East Meets the West.
The East Meets the West is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. All clips played on the show are property of their copyright holders. All other material is copyright Jupiter Media.
For more shows like the one you just heard, check out the Dorkening Podcast Network at thedorkening.com.